Rolling. Thank you.
I'll call the meeting to order. Let's have a roll call.
Certainly. Chair Eber. Here. Dr. Hodgson. Here. Dr. Allen. Dr. Bird. Dr. Chapman. Here. Dr. Dufton. Dr. Dufton. Dr. Fredericks. Here. Dr. Hernandez.
Here.
Dr. Holmes. Dr. Hernandez.
Here.
Dr. Hernandez. Melissa. Dr. J. Dr. Lee. Dr. Miller. Dr. Sussman. Dr. Torres. Quorum.
Thank you very much. Director Ascension. Are you complete? Yes. Okay, excellent. Let's call on Director Frericks to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. To your right.
Please place your hands over your heart. Join me in the pledge.
Allegiance to the flag of the United
United
States.
States of America,
To
to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Oh, well. Welcome to the board meeting for the Capital Corridor Joint Powers Authority Board of Directors. Note that today's meeting is an in-person meeting in the Solano Transportation Authority Boardroom here in lovely Suisun City with an option for participation via teleconference. Board members participating via teleconference are all doing so in locations posted 72 hours in advance of the meeting that are open and available for public participation. You can download the agenda and presentation materials at capitalcorridor.org/CCJPA-board. It's loaded with significant forward-looking proposals. All speakers, including CCJPA board and staff, are requested to announce their name when they begin to speak. Public participants in the room are asked to complete a request to address the board form and hand it to the board secretary before the item is considered. These brown forms. The participation via telephone, if you wish to speak on an agenda item, please dial *9 to virtually raise your hand when public comment is announced. When it's your turn to speak, you may need to dial *6 to accept and unmute the request. For public participation on Zoom, please use the raised hand feature if you wish to speak. To board members and staff who join via Zoom, please mute your microphones whenever you are not speaking to avoid background noise. And if you wish to make a public comment on a subject not on the agenda, you will be given an opportunity to speak under item 7. If you have a comment on an item which is on the agenda, we will take those comments after the staff presentation and prior to the board discussion. Public comment is limited to 2 minutes per person per item. Before we start, I'd like to acknowledge the service of Brett Daniels as a representative of Sacramento RT. Director Daniels has relocated out of state and has resigned his position as a result. I would also like to acknowledge that the Capitol Quarter Secretary, Mimi Key, has given birth to Ellie in the past week. We wish her the best, and we're having to make do with just the other people that have seen how Mimi performs. Yeah. Mr. I've overstepped my bounds.
It's next person. I mean, we got a deep bench here.
So that'll conclude the report of the chair. And I would like to next turn to the consent calendar. First, I'll ask for public comments on the consent calendar. I have no comments on the consent.
Move approval, Director Saltzman.
Thank you.
Director Maple.
I have a motion and a second. Any comments? No discussion? Please call the roll on the consent calendar.
Director Sussman. Director Sussman. Director Urban.
Yes, sorry, yes, and it's very hard to hear you. I don't know what's going on with your mic, but it's very muffled.
Hard to hear.
Okay, I'll take that again. Director Sussman.
Yes,
Director Urban.
Yay.
Director Lee.
yes,
Director Duffy.
yes,
Director Harshaw.
Yes.
Director Maple.
Aye.
Director Torres. Director Jane.
Here, yes,
So on my
yes,
hand.
sorry. I'm hearing yes.
Okay. Director Hernandez, yes.
I didn't hear my name. Director Byrd?
Director Byrd.
Yes.
Director Chapman. Aye. Director Freilich. Motion carries.
Thank you very much. That went smoothly. Next is the weightiest issue we'll address here today. The Capitol Corridor Joint Powers Authority fiscal year 24 through 25 service plan and authorization. I'm looking at a letter from Gavin Newsom and Secretary Hooks Omashakin. And it reads, given the timing of fleet transfers necessary to fully restore service to pre-pandemic levels, with significant cars available for higher ridership trains, our statewide service expansion approvals are timed for a March 2025 implementation. So I've sort of heated up for you, Rob.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, big news today on this
It
first
is.
item. So this first item is to accept the state funding for the FY 24 budget year. And this will be an unusual process as compared to history here, given the way the state budget approval process worked in this last cycle. As you'll hear in the presentation today, there's still some uncertainty about how the state's 8% cut in funding might impact us. We do not think it will, but that still is being worked through. So this approval is for a partial year, and my team will talk about that. So we also want to share the news about some of the things that are a part of this, including this return to full service, which we're super excited about. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to two people on my team, Leo Sanchez, the Deputy Director, and Kat Relucio, our Manager of Budget and Administration.
Thank you, Rob. Good morning, members of the board. I'm Leo Sanchez, Deputy Director with Capitol Corridor. I will begin by providing an update to the mechanical transition. As you may remember, CCJPA staff has been working to contract maintenance to a third-party maintainer. We're currently working to finalize agreements to complete the logistics for this transition. we're expecting that the transition will finalize this year. Additionally, the Siemens Venture car sets are continuing to be deployed on the San Joaquin route. This is critically important to us because as they are able to do that, that will free up equipment that will then be able to be utilized on our corridor as well as LoSAN in Southern California. As an update to our fare study, fares on the Capital Corridor route have largely been unchanged since 2013. We are evaluating changes in travel patterns since 2020, and we are completing a fare assessment for implementation. With Tap to Ride, we are also have the opportunity to now have new fare options that are available to this system. These are specific fare options that are not available through Amtrak's rigid ticketing system. And as we're evaluating the recommendations to take actions to do a fare increase, we'll be able to both do them on the standard Amtrak ticketing system as well as look at how we implement on Tap to Ride. Shown on this chart are the ridership and service levels since federal fiscal year 2019, as well as the ridership that corresponds with each of these years in the line shown. You can see that there was a sharp decline in both ridership and service levels corresponding to the COVID-19 pandemic. And as time has progressed, we've continued to increase both service levels and with that, as well as continuing to grow our ridership. So as we look at the federal fiscal year 25, and specifically to Chair Rayburn's point, March of next year, we are planning and intending to fully restore our service levels to 30 weekday trains as shown on the chart. And with that, we also anticipate continuing to have growing ridership. Shown on this chart, you can see our current service levels, which are 24 weekday trains and 22 weekend trains. For the first and second quarter of the current fiscal year, you'll see we'll continue to have the same service levels. And as equipment and our funding permits, then we intend to fully restore our service next year. And that is shown on the right-hand side. And then we'll continue to have the same service levels for the upcoming years. Next, I will hand it over to my colleague, Catherine Relucio of Manager of Budgets and Administration.
Thank you, Leo. Good morning, CCJPA Board of Directors. I'm Catherine Relucio here, Manager of Budget and Administration with Capital Corridor. And I'm going to go ahead and walk you through the annual business plan approval and funding authorization from CalSTA for FY25. So we are excited that CalSTA has provided funding and authorization to restore train service back to FY19 pre-pandemic levels, commencing in March 2025. The FY25 annual business plan approval includes phased and deferred funding allocations for some line items, which I will walk through in detail in the upcoming slides. We are also expected to continue to work towards a return to a 50% or better cost recovery level in FY25. And just for frame of reference, we were at 61% pre-pandemic in FY19, and fiscal 24 year to date, we're at 46%. And then we are also charged with continuing to seek and implement cost saving and revenue increasing strategies through and beyond future fiscal years, such as the equipment maintenance transition from Amtrak to a new maintainer and possible fare increases that may result from the fare study, both of which Leo previously discussed. And then lastly, we've been asked to develop midterm 3 to 5 year plans to align service levels with projected costs and revenue in future years. Next slide, please. So why the phased and adjusted funding authorization? So in on June 29th, the state budget for FY25 was passed. We were excited to receive the news that the budget change proposal to increase funding to the state IPR or intercity passenger rail was successful. The IPR operations budget was increased by $211 million over a 3-year period. This increase helps to address the structural deficit that the state IPRs have been facing. The longtime cap of $131 million to IPR operations that the 3 JPAs shared is increased, thus supporting the restoration of train service back to pre-pandemic levels. And that's the good news. In addition, along with the passing of the state budget was a proposal from the governor to reduce state operations by 8%. Because of the lack of the understanding of how that 8% proposed cut would impact the public transportation account, or PTA, that funds the IPRs, CCJPA received an initial allocation with the annual business plan approval deferred. With the recognition by the state that we do need to continue with business operations, we received an initial 25% of what we requested for our administrative, marketing, and information customer support services line items. And then on August 22nd, we received our second funding letter, which was our ABP approval letter. And if you could go to the next slide. The details of the full FY25 funding authorization are included in your board agenda packet beginning on page 23. The slide before you summarizes what we've been authorized by CALSA with the 2 letters that I just discussed. The second column is the amount authorized for FY24. The third column is the requested amount for FY25, which your board approved in May at the May meeting. And then the third column is what funding has been authorized to date. So we received the full funding request for Amtrak operations with just a small adjustment due to updated forecasts, the full requested amount for direct operations. We received additional funding for administration, marketing, and information customer support services, bringing us to 75% of what we requested. We may receive an additional funding later this year for these line items. We received the full allocation for the CCJPA supplemental allocations, which include minor capital and capitalized maintenance. And then lastly, for the IPR support supplemental allocations, we were fully funded for Northern California onboard Wi-Fi, statewide passenger information display system support, which supports CCJPA, SJJPA, and LOSAN, as well as the state's California Integrated Travel Project and Tap to Ride. We were not funded at this time for Link 21. This was deferred due to the recent grant received for the Transit and Intercity Rail Capital Program, or TIRCIP, to support Link 21. Again, all of these details are in your packet, starting on page 23. So in summary, we are requesting the board today to adopt CCJPA's FY25 budget in the amount of $48.2 million. And this concludes our presentation. Rob, Leo, and I will be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Rob, Leo, and Kat, for your work, and all of the people who are sitting behind you who have worked diligently to get us to this momentous point where we can see a light at the end of what's been a long 4-year tunnel. Before I go to board comments and take a motion on this, we'll have public speakers in the house is Michael Barnbaum. Please approach the podium. You have 2 minutes.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Let's see, is the microphone on now?
There
Okay,
you go.
There we go. So push the button. Thank you. Michael Barnbaum, just been doing some public transportation advocacy and consulting on this item, mainly with staff via text and phone and behind the scenes. One thing that I think is going to be important going from now to Monday, March 3rd, 2025, is studying the existing weekday schedule, identifying gaps in the schedule, and working with all stakeholders and parties involved and riders to more evenly distribute 15 trains each direction throughout the service day span, roughly from 4 a.m. to 10 p.m. or 0400 to 2200. This way, folks riding don't feel that if they didn't take one train, that there's such a long wait for the next train. I'll give you a good example and I'll elaborate that more when we get to item 7 later in the agenda. Last week was the hearing, workshop, and seminar on AC Transit Realign at 1600 Franklin Street in downtown Oakland. It was at 1400, 2 p.m. So in order to get there from Sacramento Valley Station, you had to leave at 8:55. If you didn't, there was no train till 11:55. So there's an example of a big gap in service, and hopefully that could be closed as the rollout of March 3rd gets closer. Thank you. Any questions?
Thank you very much, Mr. Barnbaum.
Thank you.
Any other speakers online?
Yes, we have one hand raised on Zoom, but there's no name. So no name. Please go ahead, unmute and speak. Hello? They're not saying anything, Director Evan.
Okay, we will move to board member comments. I'll start with those that are online. I see Steve Bird, Mayor Bird. Would you please share with us what you would like to address?
No comments.
Oh, I'm sorry. It's Suds Jane, Director Jane.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, loud and clear.
Okay, I don't know if you can display slide 11 up there, but fundamentally, my question is, in 2024, we were allocated 60 million, but now we're only being allocated 48 million. How are we going to increase the number of trains if our allocation is lower? We're going from 24 trains to 30 trains.
Managing Director Paget.
Yes, this is Rob
Gene.
Badger, Managing Director. And I'll wait till we go back to the table. Can we go to the table? The table with all the funding. Yep. So, so a couple of things are happening here. So one is that the biggest one here is that we have shifted over the mechanical funding to the San Joaquins. So as you approved at a previous meeting, that service will be performed under an agreement between our authority and the San Joaquins Joint Powers Authority. And the funding letter for the San Joaquins will reflect that. So the difference is largely the mechanical transition. I will note, however, that our revenue is assumed to continue to grow, and we are continuing to work on reducing some of those costs as well. So it's largely mechanical, but a little bit of it is revenue increase and working hard to manage costs.
It seems to me that that number should have been reflected in this table, though. If mechanicals was originally in Amtrak and now it's through San Joaquins, should be reflected here.
Yeah, good point. So this particular action is to accept the funds that are provided in the letter, and the letter itself only reflects the funds that are coming to our agency, so it does not include the mechanical. We do in our annual business plan, however, reflect that line item in the detailed chart. So this is a little bit of a narrower ask for the board today, which is to approve the funds that are provided directly to our agency.
Okay, then I would just ask that a footnote be placed somewhere in this presentation for the public, so that's clear.
Sure, got the point. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for that comment, Ms. Director Jane. I I looked at this last week and said, wow, that's more service for less money. What a beautiful thing. Let's see, I'm not seeing the screen. I saw somebody up.
Board headquarters has a hand.
Oh,
Dr. Raymond, we have a hand raised in BAT headquarters bedroom.
please, is that Director Lee and Duffy and?
It's actually Director Saltzman.
Saltzman.
So this is very exciting. I know we talked about this, I think, at our last meeting or maybe the one before about increasing service. And after we had that discussion, I got a lot of questions about how the decision will be made about which trains to replace. I assume won't be the exact service that we had pre-pandemic. So what is the process going to be to figure out where to put those additional trains?
Yeah, Rob Paget here in response. A very good question. And I will say that we have a schedule that is approved by Union Pacific. So the process we have to go through for any sort of schedule change is we develop a schedule. That schedule is reviewed by Amtrak, and it is reviewed by Union Pacific as the right-of-way owner, and also reviewed by Caltrain because we operate in a small part of the Caltrain territory. So we have to get all of those parties to agree on the schedule. So the default schedule that has already been approved by Union Pacific is the structure that we moved to in March of 21, I believe. March of 21, we have a full schedule approved. However, since that time, we have seen a change in some of the travel patterns. So we have just, as of this week, started working with the same consultant that worked for us back in 2021 to revisit the schedule and see if there are any other changes that we might consider making for that March transition. The kinds of things that we have to think about, in addition to obviously the markets that we're serving, the customers that we're serving, is we have a pretty complicated territory, because a lot of that territory is single track territory that is also used by ACE and freight trains south of Oakland. So a lot of this is about equipment moves, the turns at stations, and then the availability of capacity on the tracks at the times we're trying to run things. So it's a complicated process, but we are, again, revisiting some of those to see if there are other tweaks we make. And then lastly, I want to say that we collected a lot of good information from customers during the annual business plan process, and we've continued to see that reflected. And my ask to anyone listening or to board members is please pass that on to my team, because we want to hear that feedback. If there are trains that are missing or markets that we're not capturing appropriately or trains that you see issues with, we very much value that feedback. My team is also going to be conducting some market research in addition to support this so that we get some broad feedback from our customer base.
That sounds fantastic. Thank you.
And this is Deputy Director Leo Sanchez. One thing that I wanted to add to that is, as we're looking at fully restoring the service, we want to coincide the planned schedule implementation. So if we do make improvements to the schedule, then those will be reflected on the full service schedule next year.
And thank you for that excellent query, Director Salzman. And I wonder just what the timeline will be for making that schedule decision.
So we started that process. We anticipate that the process will continue throughout the end of the year. Tentatively, we generally try to accomplish the final schedule 6 weeks before implementation. That way, that gives the marketing communications team enough time to actually get it out to our customers. So I would say, probably late January, sometime in February potentially, is when we can have that finalized, and then that will go out and eventually get implemented in March.
Thank you very much. I don't see any further hands online. I'll turn to the in-person, my colleagues, and just come right down the line from my right, Director Alma Hernandez.
Thank you so much. Really great update. I appreciate it. I do have a question regarding as we look for, I keep seeing the reference of pre-pandemic levels. I wasn't here, still, during that period of time, but my wonder is there anything that you're seeing here that is not reflected in regards to either service programs or funding for something that we used to have pre-pandemic that you felt this is what was contributing to having those numbers? So all I have in front of me is what's here, but is there anything that we're not seeing?
Great question. Thank you, Rob Paget here. So one of the big things that's missing now in the service that's out there is that we have gaps in service. And we have that because right now we're only running with 8 train sets, and eventually we're going to have 9 train sets. And that actually makes a really big difference in our ability to serve customers throughout the day. So what our team believes is that once we fill those gaps, and this is largely on weekdays, actually on weekends, we're able to have a service that's spaced a little bit better. We do think we're going to capture some of the riders. The other thing is that we're still short on equipment. And I know at least a couple of our trains are at actually over capacity. And we think that it is possible that some customers are choosing not to ride our trains because that's the time they'd like to travel, and that particular train is not in service. So we do think getting back to 15 round trips is going to result in a decent bump in ridership at that point.
And then the only other item I have is I already see the reflection of what the pandemic has implemented in regards to how consumers behave in regards to ridership, like the tap to ride, for example, how they want to receive news. Is there anything else that you think we might not have funding yet, but should be seeing as a response to how individuals now want to engage with transportation? And if there's no answer for that yet, that would be something I'd look forward to in the future.
Yeah, so Rob Paget again here, and I'll let Leo follow up because he probably has a better answer than I do. But the big thing that we're trying to look at with this fare study is the patterns of travel. A lot of our customers were 5-day-a-week riders, so they would buy a monthly pass and ride 5 days a week, and that market has largely gone away. And I think we all anecdotally feel that in our own workplaces, where a lot of workplaces are now 3 days a week in person. So among the commuters, we have seen a change in the number of days a week that they travel. At the same time, though, what we've seen is because people are commuting longer distances, that we tend to serve that market very well. So the commuter that maybe goes into the Bay Area once or twice a week might choose to live in Sacramento for a more affordable housing option. So we see more riders in terms of variation of number of people, but riding fewer days per week. So we want to look at those patterns. The other thing that we're looking at, and I don't have a short answer on this, is the times that people travel is really different. So people seem to leave earlier. I think maybe we all learned to balance life a little bit better. So some of the later trains that were busier before are not as busy as they were pre-pandemic, but we want to look at that in lots of detail. So that's part of what this whole schedule review will do, is look at some of those patterns. And I'll turn to Leo, see if he has anything else he wants to add.
Yeah, great question. Again, this is Leo, Deputy Director. One of the other things that we see that's happening, and this is really has just been a consistent change throughout the pandemic, and even beyond, is the type of bicycles and electric scooters and things like that we are seeing on the trains have drastically changed since before 2019. So, technology has advanced. There's been a lot more, people riding scooters to and from work, to and from their homes. And that is presenting a current challenge also with trains that are not even at capacity, but they're at capacity regarding bicycle and electric scooters and electric bike storage. So that's one particular thing that our team is looking at, and we're working closely with Amtrak to figure out different ways that we can approach that challenge. So that's one, especially when we look at first and last mile riders, that we will continue to look at. I think the marketing and communications team has done a great job of looking at other opportunities, like, for example, the Pets on Board that's only been around in the last couple of years, right? So that's actually the last year. So that's a really recent a change that's happened. And then we're looking at other potential opportunities like group travel and leisure travel, which does make up a larger share of a ridership than it used to be. So when we look at our ridership patterns today, we used to have more than 50% were multi-ride ticket holders. Now, like 70% are actually single ticket riders, right? So we have a bigger opportunity to capture a different type of market. And I think that that's another opportunity that we'll continue to figure out how we engage with that rider.
Thank you so much. My questions had to do with, we are accepting these funds today, but they didn't completely provide us a full picture of the funding needed to continue to improve service. So this provides a picture for me. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your queries. Vice Chair Howdesheld.
Yeah, thank you very much. The administrative side of it, in the staff memo, it mentions that cost for staff resource will be offset by a capital grant funding. Is that included in this chart here?
It's included in the administration line item there.
Yep.
So the administrative budget includes labor and non-labor, and the capital charges that our team charges against our capital projects and operating projects as well reduces the amount of labor charges that we see. So the 4.3 million includes the offset of the capital labor charges.
Okay, thank you very much. And to Director Hernandez's comment, I caught earlier this week that Amazon said everybody's coming back. Okay, return to the office. So I think that will certainly increase ridership, and I don't know what's happening with Bay Area companies. But the marketing side of it is critical to everything. And I know this just reflects 75% of the ask. And I know there'll be a lot of folks going to Levi Stadium, but beyond that, what are the thoughts on, if we don't get the full 100% on the marketing, how will you ensure and enhance and remind people that the train is a viable option?
So Rob Padgett here, we concur. We think marketing is a huge part of our ability to bring people back. And if we do not get the full marketing budget, and I'll say even if we do get the full marketing budget, we also every year are allocated SRA funds. That's the one dedicated source of funds that our agency receives. And we have flexibility in those funds. And we actually, and we brought to the board previously, part of that approval includes a line item for strategic operations investments, and marketing certainly would be something that would qualify for that. So we're obviously going to use our funds wisely and targeted, but we think there's a lot of opportunity out there. And I will just say, we work with the team out in Placer County, but we work up and down the corridor. A lot of the marketing efforts that we take on, we do in partnership with the other agencies, and look forward to more opportunities to do that with all of you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Vice Chair Howdesheld. I'll continue down the line. Would you?
Yeah, thank you. I had some same questions around marketing that Director Hobeshal had, but my only question here is just around operational costs and how we cover the cost of labor on increased train usage or increased, when that moves back to that level, how is that accounted for?
Thanks for the question. So the way that our, Rob Padgett here, so the way that our costs work for anything that is directly operated by Amtrak is through a cost allocation approach. This is a national approach, and we're actively engaged with SAPRC, which is the State Amtrak Intercity Passenger Rail Committee, which establishes the policy by which costs are allocated to agencies. So within that policy, we worked with Amtrak to receive forecasts for the increased costs. So that's already built into these operating costs. And then there are other pieces that we directly manage. So the mechanical contract, which we are working with Sam Keynes on, we manage the Wi-Fi budget. So there's some pieces of this that we directly manage, but largely that comes through working with Amtrak.
And that's the piece in the report under B where under here on the slides, it's on the being shown the direct operations for buses, connection services. That's all done through in-house, right?
Some of it's done
Okay.
in-house, so, but some of it, yeah, the bus connection, some of that is done in-house. So we have the El Dorado partnership, Wi-Fi PIDs, that's all done in-house. Yep,
All right, thank you.
yep, sure thing.
Thank you, Director Chapman and Director Frerichs.
Great. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Just a couple quick things. One, I appreciate the staff report. And Leo, just a question for you, particularly regarding, you mentioned the San Joaquin's, the new Siemens venture cars and sort of, so, and then you said that we may be able to acquire or inherit some of the sort of some of their former stock. So I'm curious about, are we talking sort of full train sets? Or are we just talking about individual cars? And then is the plan to just, is that how we address some of the issues around capacity? I mean, just, tack on another car or two potentially. I know we obviously have a limit of, I think it's about 6 cars, I think, or so, maybe not in that range. So just curious about that a little bit. If you could give some more detail about what you're thinking about there, I'd appreciate it.
Yep, thanks for the question. Leo Sanchez again. So the rail cars that are the primary thing that's being freed up. So the asset that we're still going to continue to share between both services are the locomotives. That's really the main component that we will still continue to share between the venture car sets and the legacy equipment. But yes, the mix of rail cars that will be available for us to use are a combination of coach cars, diner cars, so that cafe cars as well, and the cab cars. So they will have their own dedicated cab cars. They've had some issues with the current one that they're working on right now for the venture sets, but once that's resolved, then that will certainly free up cab cars that we'll be able to utilize, and we'll be able to utilize that in a variety of ways. Our first intent is in the coming weeks, especially as we approach our busiest time of the year in October, is to lengthen train sets, the existing train sets we have.
Great.
And then once we're ready to do the full implementation of the schedule next year, then we'll specifically be mindful of the existing trains today that are the busiest, and we need to think about accommodating not just ridership, but also heavier bicycle, electric scooters, et cetera.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. Appreciate that. And then one more quick question, bring it up now. It's for, I think for you, Leo, or also Priscilla too, kind of a tweener, but it goes into the issues of the marketing and such too, but also in terms of ridership and a new schedule as well, which is just, the temporary relocation of the A's from Alameda County to Yolo County, Greater Sacramento region. No, but all, there's.
We'll rename it.
Exactly. But in all, we've had a lot of success, right? Obviously with trains to and from, Levi Stadium as an example, and bringing folks to and from the games. There's obviously a lot more in the way of baseball games than there are football games, but just wanting to sort of check in with you all around what you're thinking about, right? If we're about to implement a new schedule change in the beginning of next year, we're obviously preparing for increases in ridership, natural increases in ridership in general, just due to the pandemic recovery, but then also this is going to be a change. And so we just, hope you're all thinking of that as part of the sort of planning that's going on. So, and happy to, have further conversations later in the meeting or, at a future meeting about this. But I think it's important, for us to sort of be thinking about that. So anticipating that there may be some folks certainly coming from that want to come from the Bay up towards Sacramento to catch games and such. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks for your comment. This is Leo again. That actually has been in the topics of our conversations recently, especially as we think about full service, as we think about adjusting the existing schedule. And just to back up a little bit and to talk about the existing special events that we're serving, we have served both concerts and football games at Levi Stadium. We've done that now for the past couple of years. We're going to continue to do that. I think it's a great way to market our service. We get a lot of great riders that are eager to get down to the game and excited to ride the Capitol Quarter and not have to worry about getting in and out of the traffic jam that happens down there. So that is something we'll continue to do. And similarly, we're looking at other opportunities like the A's relocating to Sacramento. And so that is something that we're going to be thinking about. And when we do those things, we'll look at the existing schedule, but as some of those games are nearer and we have a better sense of how the logistics will play out around Sacramento Valley Station, we can also look at some adjustments for special events trains, similar to what we've been able to do with Levi's. Because one great thing that we've been able to do with trains that go down to Levi Stadium is that we're actually not doing them at extra cost. We're able to modify existing train schedules, and it's both an efficient way to do that, but it also it gets us really full trains that are able to provide a great service. And then the last thing that I'll piggyback off of that is I think that once we have the full schedule restored, another thing that Priscilla at our marketing team has brought up is that we would love to go back and start providing some of the other group travel events that we've done in the past, but we need to have the trains in the right slots and be able to provide a great service to our customers.
Thanks so much. Appreciate that.
Thank you, everyone, for your comments. And I would like to just share that I'm so excited as a transit-dependent passenger to see the changes that are being proposed for the weekday service. I have 3 short questions. Will there be any changes for weekend schedules?
So we're going to look at the schedule holistically and we'll see how that performs. I can tell you that the midday trains all perform pretty well, and there's really distributed service throughout both Saturday and Sunday, and that they do end up having really good ridership. The morning, the first trains out, both eastbound and westbound, and then the last trains of the day on the same directions aren't in that same category. They generally aren't performing very well. So those are things that we can consider and look at how some of the changes that we might consider for those trains. But largely, I think the middle of the day seems to do pretty well. So it might not be heavily touched, but we'll have to see as we dive into the data.
And next, will the Amtrak Thruway bus service, which was really clobbered by the pandemic, will that be restored to some degree? I see there's additional funds.
So for now, we're continuing to monitor it and see how that performs. We're doing that, and we've done that actually with all of our routes. Reno is one that particularly was really pared back in the start. So we used to run 3 round trips to Reno. Then we took that all the way down to 1. That quickly was one that we added the second round trip because we saw that it was really popular and really successful. So we added the second one, and we do have that ability and flexibility in our contracting. So we're continuing to look at that and let the data guide us and see where are we seeing demand and where can we both benefit but also help our riders in providing that connectivity. So we'll continue to see what are some opportunities on the bus side.
Good response. And finally,
I'm going to add one more thing to that too on the bus side. So we have not stopped our interest in partnering with transit agencies. So we also want to continue to look for opportunities to do that so we can enhance those connections with open door service that anybody can take, even if they're not on an Amtrak service.
Thank you. And my final question is really around the cab cars. And Leo, you noted that the cab cars are incredibly popular with, of course, they have the bike spaces, the majority of the bike spaces, and they get filled. So will we be going back to perhaps a couple of cab cars on some of the busier trains?
Yeah, great question. So I think that as the equipment is available, we're specifically going to be, looking for those bicycle cab cars that were really useful previously. And so that is going to be of great interest for us to utilize those in that specific way and figure out, how do the turns support the busiest bicycle trains.
Thank you very much. And let's move this along.
Yeah, Director Jane has his hand up.
Director Jane.
Yeah.
Before I make a motion.
Because somebody mentioned, events at Levi's. I'm really pleased that we hold the trains because sometimes the performers go overtime. And it's very important for people attending to have the certainty that they won't be stranded. But I was wondering if we are doing the same thing for earthquakes games at PayPal.
So great question, and that actually was something that has come up recently. We're gonna look at those games and we're gonna see how we can support just the venue in general, because we haven't done that as much, but we're gonna be looking at that both in near term, but also as we look at the schedule changes and how we optimize the changes, how we better support that area as well, Director Jane.
Good question.
Great, thank you very much.
And with that, Chairman, I will authorize.
That's horrible. We have 2 hands raised on Zoom. Public comments. Okay, so call in user number 2, please go ahead.
Can you hear me now?
Yes. Clear.
Great. This is David Pilpel from San Francisco. I raised my hand earlier, but I guess it wasn't caught. So a number of quick comments. First to April and her staff, thank you for continuing to send packets and supplemental materials. I appreciate it very much. To Rob, I drafted a long letter about the annual business plan schedules and fares some months back, but I got lost in the PRIIA Section 209 issues, and I ended up not sending it. I'd prefer to discuss the contents with Rob sometime, and I will try to reach him to do that. A couple other things. I do note that San Francisco has 2 members of this board, but it seems to me that San Francisco gets less emphasis in terms of the service schedules and marketing than other elements of the corridor. Not sure that I need a response. Just I know that you know that it provides service into the city, but just wanted to note that. I can be convinced that restoring the pre-COVID service levels makes sense, particularly on weekdays. But seeing some of the ridership details by train and perhaps by weekday versus weekend, and the proposed new schedules or alternatives before March would be helpful, and allowing some time for public input on that. And finally, as you just discussed, I think the bus connections and coordination with the San Joaquin's ACE and other services in the corridor should be considered. And maybe if you have an item at the November board meeting for an update on the schedules change for March, that would be great. Thanks very much for listening. I hope the comments are helpful.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Yes. This speaker has no name, but please unmute yourself and say your name for the record and go ahead. Please go ahead.
Sorry, it's David Pelpel. I just spoke by phone. Thanks.
Okay. All right. So no other speakers.
No other speakers.
Thank you very much. We'll carry on.
Chair, I'll move that, move resolution 2423, authorizing the Capital Corridor Joint Powers Executive Director or their designee to sign enter into all necessary agreements for implementation of the FY25 annual business plan and accepting the funding. And if I got that anyway wrong, somebody will clean it up for me.
Sounds good to me. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Motion by Director Haudesheld and a second by Director Hernandez. Please call the roll.
Dr. Sussman.
Yes.
Dr. Rabin.
Yay.
Dr. Lee.
Yes.
I thought you said your own. Sorry.
Dr. Duffy.
Yes.
Dr. Harsha.
Aye.
Dr. Whipple.
Aye.
Dr. Torres. Dr. Jane.
Yes.
Dr. Alma Hernandez.
Aye.
Dr. Bird.
Aye.
Dr. Chapman.
Aye.
Dr. Frericks. Motion carries.
Thank you, everyone. Next items are all informational only items, and so we'll probably move fairly quickly through the agenda. The next is the September Rail Safety Month.
All right, so happy to introduce Renee Graham from my team. As you know, safety is a top priority of the board and this organization. And we spend lots of energy doing everything in our power to make the corridor safer. And in that light, I would like to introduce Renee, who will talk about a recent event which we consider to be very successful in drawing lots of attention to this important issue across the corridor. With that, I'll turn it over to Renee.
Welcome, Vernay.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Vernay Graham, Principal Marketing and Communications at Capital Corridor. This is a very quick presentation just to show you sort of what was done at this event and some positive feedback we had. This was an event that actually took a lot of planning, a lot of coordination with a lot of different partners. And so last month, at the end of last month, what we decided to do, along with California Operation Lifesaver, Union Pacific, Amtrak, and other partners, is that we launched early September Rail Safety Month, which was with a special train event in Oakland aimed at increasing awareness around tracks and crossings. Next slide, please. Go to the next slide. Okay. So a couple things, it was a multifaceted sort of approach to a lot of things were going on board the train, as well as on the ground. So on board the train, we provided an overview of sort of the rail safety initiatives by Capital Corridor, Union Pacific, Operation Lifesaver, and Amtrak. And what resulted was a very robust conversation about the routes between Oakland and Hayward. In the front of the train, on the locomotive and on the cab, when we turned, we had law enforcement officers from 5 jurisdictions that were communicating on the ground to on the ground teams what they were seeing as they were going through the corridor. And any possible violations in real time. We were able to point out obstacles along the track, improvements, and we discussed future rail safety projects along the corridor. We also were able to engage city officials that showed up from 4 different cities: Berkeley, Oakland, San Leandro, and Hayward at the time. And during sort of the 3.5 hour event, law enforcement officers on board the train and the ground crossing communications issued 43 citations and warnings to individuals violating railroad crossing and traffic signals. Most of these violations involved vehicles stopped on the tracks or people walking alongside the tracks. So it was very successful as far as just in that very short period of time, the number of violations for the enforcement portion of it. But it was also our opportunity to sort of engage city officials to see what was happening along the tracks in their community. Next track. And here's just a sort of logos of the partners that were involved. I think for all of us, we were really pleasantly surprised by the folks that came out and to be able to sort of raise awareness. We had over 30 law enforcement officers that all from 5 jurisdictions that showed up to be a part of this. And so we're able to sort of engage them and just raise awareness amongst the folks in the community, all across the community. So that's it.
Thank you very much. It was a great event, and I thought that one of the key components was to hand out a map showing that corridor between Oakland and Hayward is only about 25% of our mileage, but it represents over 75% of our injuries and fatalities. So there was a reason for this focus. Thank you. Good job, Vernay.
I have a question.
Oh, please.
So I grew up here in Suisun City, and I didn't know any better, didn't have a car. So as a high school student, freshman, I would get on the tracks and walk on the tracks with a friend of mine all the way to our high school, which is, connecting to the next city across the tracks. And never once did I think of, we're 14, 15 years old, we're not thinking we're going to get hurt. Has there been any effort to maybe partner with like safe routes to schools in some of these locations to identify other ways to bring that forth, especially with youth?
So Operation Lifesaver, California Operation Lifesaver is part of a national nonprofit organization that volunteers, made up of volunteers that go around and in communities and they partner with schools that are along railroad tracks and communities. And they do a lot of outreach and talking to kids about the dangers of rail safety. So this is it's a national, nationwide effort, but locally we have a large group of volunteers that go to the schools and trying to not just elementary schools, but colleges, campuses too, because what you're talking about happens throughout. So whether at one point, I know Chico State and Fresno State students were doing the same thing, using the tracks as shortcuts. And then there's also those that are playing chicken, with the trains and things like that. So that organization is made up of employees from different rail agencies and law enforcement, and they go out into the communities. A lot of times schools in fact, in Hayward, there's a high school at the Tennyson High School. They reached out to Operation Lifesaver to come out and do a presentation at the, in assembly type of a presentation about rail safety. And some of it's very graphic, depending, it's age appropriate information that they provide. But just showing them and trying to instill, the dangers of shortcuts and all the different things that happen along the tracks.
Thank you so much. I'll look at that organization and I see a member of STA here as well to bring back as well. Thank you for that information. I appreciate that.
Thank you, Director Hernandez and Director Maple.
Thank you, Chair. Kind of in the same line of, well, first of all, great job. It sounds like an incredible event, which maybe I'll try to make the next one. It's not in my area, but I really appreciate the focus on the places where it's most needed. So I think that's great. Great to see all the partners. So kind of in the same line of thought, we know that one of the other challenges that we have is with, unhoused communities and residents kind of getting onto the tracks and maybe not always understanding the dangers. Do you know if Operation Lifesaver or any of these other groups or organizations are working to do outreach in those communities?
That's a good question, Director. Leo Sanchez again. So we do work directly with California Operation Lifesaver. We actually, this board adopted funding for California Operation Lifesaver. So we work with them directly to figure out what are the areas that need this help the most, and that includes some of the unhoused populations. We also do some of this work indirectly through Union Pacific. So as they are coming along the right of way and they're seeing areas with particular issues, they do have different community engagement opportunities to talk with different organizations and figure out how do we get some of the attention in terms of the safety awareness, and then some appropriate areas of relocation where they can be.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Any other comments from the board? Director Jane. And
yes, I've been very concerned about this, of course, because of the tragedy of loss of life, but also it affects our on-time performance. I was wondering if there are funds available. I come from a tech world. So if there are funds available to add, say, I think it was mentioned that many of the loss of life issues are due to people walking along the tracks and then cars stopped on the tracks. And it seems like we should be able to detect that a car is stopped on the track for more than, 30 seconds or a minute, and maybe flash some sort of warning signal and even alert the train that might be approaching. Are there funds available to add that kind of technology so that we can prevent these tragedies?
Great question, Director Jane. Leo again. Through California Operation Lifesaver, we did do a targeted campaign that actually started last year. We did that over the summer. We're planning to do that again, which specifically use geofenced areas where we can send digital campaign ads, radio ads, just the specific counties and communities where that were most affected. We're going to reach out and work out with the organization that California Operation Lifesaver worked with last year and do that again. So we'll have to look to see what areas we want to target this time. And then we're also just tracking other technology options that are out there. There are some, like in Texas, that have used Rail Sentry that detects trespassers and can notify the appropriate dispatchers of things that are going on. And it could be more than even trespassing pedestrians. It could be vehicles on the track and being notified ahead of that. So we're looking at those technologies, seeing how they're working. I know Caltrain has recently worked to do some work with them. And that'll be a good opportunity for us to benchmark and learn from what they're seeing. And then the last item that I want to remind you is that we also did apply for a CRISI grant. So we're looking forward to seeing if that grant is approved in our favor. And if that happens, then part of that grant was also to explore different ways that we can explore trespasser and vehicle mitigation strategies. So we definitely want to continue to do everything that we possibly can do in this effort, but there are many things that we're currently doing.
Great, thank you.
very much. Director Jane, thank you, and thank you, Leo, for your responsiveness. Let's hear from a public speaker. No?
No, there's none.
Okay, then let's move on to the capital project update.
Right.
Spotlight.
And I know we're running a little long, so my team's going to be quick today on this presentation, but for our capital project update, we're going to focus on two things. We talked previously about corridor ID. Our corridor was designated, so we owe you an update on that. I'm going to give you a little bit of an update. And then also talk about the Carquinez High-Level Crossing Project. So for these updates, today we have Camille Tsao from our team and Jim Allison. And with that, I'm going to turn it over. I think Camille's the starting speaker.
Welcome, Camille and Jim.
It is on. Okay. Good morning. Counterintuitive. Good morning, directors. Camille Tsao. I'm going to start with the overview of the Corridor ID program. So with the enactment of the bipartisan infrastructure law, the Federal Railroad Administration, the FRA, established the Corridor ID program. And this program creates a foundational framework for identifying and developing new or improved intercity passenger rail service. Prior work that Capital Corridor has done on the Vision Plan and Link 21 with BART has elements of service development planning, which is the main part of the Corridor ID program. So we're a little ahead, I guess, in that regard. The State Rail Plan done by Caltrans, CalSTA also has done a lot of work in service development planning. In the fall of last year, 2023, there were 69 corridors selected by the FRA across the country for this program. 6 of them are in California, and Caltrans manages the California corridors, all except for the high-speed rail corridor, but they do coordinate. FRA has asked them to make sure that all the California corridors are coordinated. And our rail network in California is more mature than many other states in the Corridor ID program, which FRA does recognize. So the work that we're going to be doing in the coming year will be tailored to the complexities of our corridor. The main deliverable in the Corridor ID program is a service development plan. And we see there are 3 main purposes of the service development plan. First is to develop an inventory of projects to achieve our service goals. Second, to strategically prioritize projects that can be completed in the near term while also considering important mega projects in the long term. And then third, to provide an opportunity to engage host railroads in a planning process that the state and federal governments are committed to. So a little bit more about our corridor. So the corridor that they named it the Capital Corridor, which is a little confusing because in the Corridor ID program, it's more than just our existing corridor. So on this map, you see in the blue, you see our existing corridor. And then in the yellow bubbles are the 4 extensions that have been included in our corridor for the purposes of the Corridor ID program. So you've got the Reno extension, the East-West Rail extension to Marin, the Link 21 crossing between Oakland and San Francisco, and the Salinas extension down south. It doesn't mean that Capital Corridor is going to operate service in these extensions, but they've been grouped together for purposes of service planning. We're also going to need to coordinate with the San Joaquin corridor, which is a separate one in the Corridor ID program, and the high-speed rail corridor on the Caltrain line. This next map shows we have, in addition to the extensions, we also have mega projects shown by the pink bubbles. So we've got the Carquinez high-level crossing, Link 21 again, and the Alviso rail adaptation project. We also have in green projects beyond planning, SAC to Roseville, the new Hercules station, and South Bay Connect. And so these projects are beyond what's in the scope of a service development plan. We've already done a lot of work in these areas. And so these are what makes our corridor more complex or different from your typical corridor in the Corridor ID program. So as I mentioned, we're going to be working with Caltrans and FRA in the near future to figure out what is the scope of work that we're going to be doing, considering that we have these projects that are ahead. So just a little bit more about mega projects before I hand it over to Jim Allison. The CCJPA 2016 Vision Plan identified strategic capital investments for incremental service expansion. So this is work that is going to be done in the Corridor ID. So we've already done some work in thinking about what our corridor needs to increase service, increase speeds and reliability, et cetera. A lot of the Corridor ID program is looking at these nearer term projects that can be completed in 10 to 15 years. We don't have a lot of these, so-called low-hanging fruit projects. We might have a handful, but we don't have a lot. And that, again, is why we need to really think about what our mega projects require, because we really need some of these mega projects to really make a difference in terms of our service levels. So mega projects, they require years of planning work and an understanding of how we're going to phase project development and funding. So the work that we are doing on our mega projects is going to feed into the Corridor ID process. And so, we have a good leg up on starting the work on that. So now I'm going to hand it over to Jim.
Thank you, Camille. Jim Allison, Manager of Planning for Capital Corridor JPA. I did want to go into this one particular project, which has completed now. This is the Carquinez high-level crossing mega project. And as we talked about before, especially in February and in prior times with phase 1, we've completed 2 steps of study. One was to look at what is a new replacement high-level crossing, where could it be? That was stage 1 with 14 potential alignment options studied, and that was narrowed down to 4. And what we're covering today is how we looked at those 4. And this will be the final presentation on the engineering analysis of these options. So to next slide. So wanted to cover what we're looking at with these 4. There are 2 that are oriented around Vallejo. with the subtle difference, bigger if you get down on the ground level, but at the map level here in the kind of orange shaded area, we have an alignment that more follows the shoreline, which is in the pink route. And then on the other side, there's a option on the Interstate 80 route. And then finally, in the next slide, we'll see that there's an east and a west option in the Benicia Martinez area for a crossing. And we looked at all of these, looked at preliminary engineering analysis, not only of the crossing itself, but the approaches and then the other ways to connect all of these solutions between Richmond and Sassoon. So we tried to, in the study, make everything as equivalent as we could in terms of speed. And so we could see some sense of equivalence between the different options. On the next slide, what we will see, however, is that we already eliminated one of the Benicia Martinez options, and that would be the western option. And we did that because it's so similar to the east option, but has these other complications of highway structures on the Benicia side, 2 other crossings of marine traffic. So if we go on the east side, we only have 1 crossing, and that affects the bridge construction and other considerations. So we have eliminated the west option for further consideration. We go to the next slide. This is essentially all the meat in the report, which is on our website at this point in time, is concerning these highlighted issues and finding the right balance between them, whether it's be the bridge itself, how heavy and complex it is to do, or how it can be phased in, how it can be built in over time. Some options have that ability, some do not. And then, as I said, the service characteristics, we tried to keep the same, but all of these have different impacts for whether you can operate freight with them or look at the impacts to the built environment or the natural environment. So we can go to the next slide. The report summary comes in with kind of a relative rating with the following criteria, some of which of those 3 remaining alternatives, there is success and there isn't success in some categories. And then there's a nuance, of course, between different options. And I'm not going to read them out here, but there are pluses and minuses to them, and cost certainly is a driver of some of our public decisions we want to make. If we can go to the next slide, we have a range of costs here and capabilities. On the Vallejo, if you were a shoreline route, we can do that with or without freight, but it can't be very well phased. You kind of got to build it and do it all at once. There's no walking into it. On the Interstate 80 route, there was really no way to put freight in the same alignment. So that is a passenger only option. So that is limited to, and again, it also cannot be phased. The Benicia Martinez option is the ability to do freight and passenger, and it can be phased. And in fact, if we look back at a map of the entire Benicia Martinez route, you can see that you can do a lot of things before you actually come to the bridge, or you can put the bridge first and then catch up later with the different options. The money range that we're looking at, we are always talking billions in this. These aren't cheap solutions. But the last time they did a crossing, it lasted, it's now almost 100-year anniversary coming up for the existing bridge. So that we have a range of contingencies on this, all the way up to 100% contingency. So we do talk about the minimum usable segment cost versus doing all the segments, and Benicia Martinez has the best options for that. Next slide. These are engineering studies and it's up on our website, as I mentioned. And there's a lot of detail in that, and the analysis was done by HDR, and we have Buzzberger in the room here who led that study, but there's a lot more work to be done to make decisions about whether we should go in partnership with freight or we should not, the different social impacts of the different routes, the environmental strategies of building, and then the different consistencies and how to blend this whole process, which will take years, into the corridor ID process. And that eventually leads you to different funding strategies and then certainly stakeholder engagement. So we are going to be working with Caltrans and then also FRA on the inclusion or the ways to include these projects, which have a long lifespan before you can advance them into the construction phase. So with that, I'll take any questions. Thank you.
And I'll just add too that we'll take questions on any of the capital items that are in the packet.
Let's first see if we have any speakers online.
There's none.
None. So I'll turn to the board. I'll start from my left if anyone has any questions, comments. Director Hernandez.
I do have a comment. I just wanted to update the board and also thank Mr. Allison. I had asked our executive director at STA, Daryl Hall, to reach out to have a presentation that we received last time about all the models presented directly to the Solano Transportation Authority Board, which provided the mayors of Benicia and the mayor of Vallejo to receive the information directly as it pertains to their communities and where rail would have gone, and opportunities to ask questions directly. And so I thought that was very beneficial, and it also provided some perspective and context of why one city, the city of Vallejo, has been championing an opportunity to have rail go through there. And it was a model that was not feasible, that was being presented. It's not as easy. There's a lot of pieces there. And then on the Carquinez Martinez side, which affects Benicia most closely, it provided them an opportunity to just say that these are things that we are going to champion and also bring community along so that they can participate in the process. So just wanted to provide that update and extend my gratitude to you for your time. Thank you.
Oh, Director Jane.
Yeah, I'd like to understand a little bit better the funding if we have freight trains on this. Do we split the cost with UP or somebody else? Does it make it cheaper? Are there other funds available? And then I guess if there was a freight train, it would be advantageous to have a siding so that we weren't, backed up behind a freight train.
Yes, this is Jim Allison answering that question. It's an important question for funding strategies as well. Obviously, when there's goods movement involved, that does open up other opportunities for partnership with both freight and passenger rail interests, but also it does cost more. So this is a heady question that doesn't have a strategy behind it per se at this point in time. We're just aware of these opportunities. So I'm not going to say today which way we're going to go. I think it's a much larger statewide, even national conversation in this case of a mega project. But in terms of how it would be built, it would be advantageous. A lot of the strategies that we're looking in the vision plan are to have similar corridors, but dedicated tracks. So it may make sense when you build big infrastructure projects to build the big infrastructure once, even though it costs a bit more to do it all, but it solves a problem for all modes all at once. And in terms of operations, you can have a fluidity of those operations rather than leaving the freight trains to the lift bridge now, then they get a lift event and suddenly they show up and they interrupt the flow that we might have as a passenger train operation. So it all needs a dynamic analysis with it, but it's a very serious question to contemplate and needs to be dealt with at high levels of policy, both state and national.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. And seeing no other comments, I just have one question, and it's for Camille regarding the corridor ID. And I recall when the list was first released, I think it was in 2022, it included a corridor from the Bay Area to San Luis Obispo, and the prospect of connecting the Bay Area with that natural hub at San Luis Obispo is so appealing. Could you answer if that's fallen off the list, or it's just didn't fit on our map?
Yeah, it's not on our map, but it is one of the California corridors, and Caltrans is leading that one.
I think it would be a very exciting option for the growing number of people in the Bay Area who are, again, transit dependent, and want to have a getaway to just a lovely environment.
I did want to say that This is Jim Allison. There is an overlap of the section from San Jose down to Salinas with that coast corridor, which was what she was talking about. So it all has to be worked out. I think they picked who's showing what in DC, and now they're like meeting us, and well, that's better for them.
Thank you. We'll move along.
Yes, I'm so sorry. Yeah,
We have-
there's one public comment on Zoom.
Okay, please proceed.
Yeah. Call in user number 2, please go ahead. Unmute.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we do.
Great. It's David Pilpel again. I just wanted to point out there's a lot of concern for Amtrak assets on the Northeast Corridor and bridge and tunnel replacement assets that are over 100, 150 years old, critical assets there. I don't believe that this corridor has those types of issues with such levels of deterioration, but we also shouldn't wait. So I think the bridge replacement here is, getting to be critical, and good that we're ahead of it. This clearly is a mega project along with the others that staff has identified. There will be CEQA and NEPA issues. It is a navigable waterway. There are all kinds of considerations for routing and freight access, et cetera. But I'm glad that staff is ahead of the curve on this one. And this clearly is going to be many years in the planning, design, funding, construction, et cetera. But I just wanted to note that it's not the Northeast Corridor, but we do have aging assets, whether it's this bridge, the Yolo Causeway, the bridge into Sacramento, the Alviso segment, et cetera, all of which you're aware of, but we should continue to highlight for other funders and policymakers. Thanks for listening.
Thank you, David Pilpel. And let's move on to the legislative and funding update.
Yeah, and I don't have much to give here. There's a summary in your packet with an update. We are standing by to hear if we are successful in our Christie application. The one thing I'll note for those who are paying attention on the railroad crossing elimination program, those applications are due on the 23rd. I know some of you are working on some of those. I've done a letter at least this week. But if we need to provide any more letters of support, please let us know on that. We'll be happy to take any questions.
Seeing none, we'll move on to the managing director's report.
All right, so if you stop paying attention, this is the time to pay attention. I have a big announcement, which is today we carried our 1 millionth passenger for the fiscal year.
Today, I was that person maybe.
Big day. It's been a long ride. So, and we are still moving up, and we're excited about it. But that is a big deal for all of us. So appreciate everybody who's helped us get to that point. Also want to say hello to, we have been partners with Climate Corps for a long time. We bring in fellows for a year. We actually have 2 people on our team who are permanent staff who went through the program. So I'll say hello to Kai Mosier and Hillary Pritchard, who are joining us for this year. So we're excited to have them. And and we're gonna pull them into the rail world, transportation world. So we're excited to bring new people onto our team. All right, so I'll just hit this real quick. I have a couple of slides today on performance. This is our we weren't quite there at the end of August, but this is through the end of August. We were 12% above last year, 19% above revenue. And that is, as Leo talked about earlier, we have more of those single ticket trips, which are higher cost tickets, which is why we're seeing that difference. Fare box recovery ratio, we're not at 50% yet, which is an important number to get to, but we're getting there. And then OTP is coming back. So that's exciting. And I will say, and I've got a slide later on fatalities, but all the work we're doing on safety, it does make a difference. It does matter. We appreciate Amtrak's support on this. We know the impact on engineers and on conductors and on our customers and on the families impacted, but this OTP is coming up because we're chipping away at that real challenging problem. Next slide.
Rob, before you leave that slide.
Yeah.
I should know this, but I don't. Passenger OTP, is that passengers on time?
So the difference between passenger OTP and endpoint OTP is when the train pulls into its last station, we're measuring the train. And that's endpoint, but customer OTP, passenger OTP is actually, do you get to your station on time? That's the one that matters the most, but we track them both. All right, next slide, please. So this is the first year, Tap to Ride is clicking along. We're learning a ton about how this works and lots of challenges. We're the first intercity rail service in the country to do this. Amtrak has been super helpful in this partnership. So we'll start, the numbers are still small. We're working on some details to expand the current pool of people who are permitted to be in the program, but we'll start to bring this to you so you can see where we're headed on Tap to Ride. We think this is a real game changer for our service. Next slide. We're going to keep bringing this to you because our goal is to get this number to 0. So we are doing better than last year. Unfortunately, I have to say we're at 14 for 2024, but we will keep letting you know when stuff happens. This tells a little bit of the picture, but we also have the challenges with vehicles on tracks and other delays. And I think that's my last slide. All right, I was trying to go fast. So I'll be happy to, I guess we'll wait for public comments, but happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Do you have any public on the line?
There are no hands raised on Zoom. No, one just came in.
Okay, please.
Calling user number 2, please go ahead.
David Pilpel again. You can hear me all right?
Loud and clear.
Excellent. Just 2 things on the on Rob's report. I believe in early October is the first meeting of the new FRA, Passenger Rail Committee, that was established. I don't know that that's going to have any direct impact on Capital Corridor, but if there is, or if there's anything to report out from that, it would be nice to have a line in the written report for the November meeting on that. And just thinking about the ridership milestone, I remember very well in the late 1980s or early 90s, a number of meetings of the Train Riders Association of California in Sacramento, Rich Tolmack, and a variety of others who actually dreamt up the Capital Corridor service, and ultimately funding was included in Prop 108 and Prop 116, and all of that ultimately resulted in the service that you're overseeing and the success that we've had with it. So I just wanted to mention him and that, and also to remember Art Lloyd, who has now been gone for, nearly 8 years, and his longtime support for passenger rail and Operation Lifesaver from Verne's report earlier. Those are my thoughts. Thanks again for listening.
Thank you, David Pilpel. Let's see if there's any appetite from my colleagues to hear updates on any of the programs or projects listed under item 6. If not, we'll move along to the board director reports. Anyone? I have a brief report that on August 7th, I attended a presentation by some Link 21 interns, some of the brightest people I think I've ever met, who proposed access improvements to the 1913 Berkeley station, assuming increased service to BART-like levels. And it was a very exciting presentation. I know that Managing Director Padgett had talked with one of the students, and yeah, I hope we'll see them working for us someday in the future and implementing some of their wonderful ideas for access improvements at that station. Let's move on to public comments. I have one public speaker card in. Michael Birnbaum, would you care to address the board?
Thank you. Last Wednesday, I had the opportunity to attend a hearing, a workshop, and seminar on a project called Realign. Realign is AC Transit's comprehensive operational analysis. And it was a great opportunity to go and speak and represent the riders of the Capitol Corridor, San Joaquin's, California Zephyr, and the Coast Starlight, the 4 intercity passenger rail lines here in Northern California. So 3 areas of focus were mentioned to represent those rider groups. Route U, which is a proposal to offer service from the Union City BART station to Stanford University, would go through the potential future Ardenwood station. It is currently a service that's 5 days a week. In the testimony, we asked for service 7 days a week once the Ardenwood station comes online after a successful completion of South Bay Connect. Route 73, which travels from Eastmont Transit Center to OAK Airport, serves the Coliseum station. Their proposal is to reduce service from 15-minute frequencies to 20-minute frequencies, but maintain 7-day-a-week service. We were okay with that as long as they were key to continue to provide that. And probably the big one of the 3 was the F. The F provides service from University of California at Berkeley to Salesforce Transit Center through the city of Emeryville. And we've asked that they route the F into the bus parking area at the Emeryville station such that it could be an open transit service collecting not only Amtrak riders, but any member of the public. It would help increase AC Transit revenue and be a good partnership such that Amtrak and its routes can come together and eliminate the charter bus services that are very expensive, mind you, operating from Emeryville to San Francisco today, and all the services can save some money with an open transit system and transit agency providing the service frequently to anybody. Do you have any questions from that? Okay, they're looking to take a final action on this October 9th at the soonest, but it could be later. And I met with Robert Rosario and the team on this project. It's very important for Capitol Corridor and the JPAs to be aware of this project.
Thank you, Mr. Barnbaum.
Thank you.
You've made very good points, and I believe there are several people in the audience who have attended those Realign meetings that we regularly hold with our partners at AC Transit. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I just realized I do have something. And when I went to the CCJPA website today, for my first time, maybe it's been there longer, I saw pictures of all of our staff there. And I thought that was terrific, you know, really putting a face and rather just not a name and a title. So if that's something, yeah, I just wanted to recognize that. You can tell me that that's been there for 1.5 years and I just happened to notice it today.
No,
I'll be fine with
that's
that.
new. I appreciate that you're paying attention.
Okay,
Thank you.
that's
Appreciate the
good.
comment.
Were our climate fellows on the website? We might need to pop in, take a shot, take a selfie. Yeah. Okay, that brings us to a close, and our next board meeting will be November 20th. This meeting is adjourned. Thank you.